You walk into a store, and right there, staring you down, are two TVs with ridiculously long names and a lot of hype. The TCL QM8K and the Hisense U8QG. They're both putting up billboard-sized specs. Mini LED? Check 4K? Check high brightness? Gaming features? Tons of acronyms? Yeah, all there too. But which one should actually live in your living room? That's what we're figuring out today. This isn't one of those reviews where we throw numbers at your face and call it a day. We're digging into how these TVs really feel to use. What's it like flipping on a show after work? Gaming late at night with the lights off? Watching a Sunday afternoon game with sunlight pouring in through the windows? Let's start with the simple stuff. Design. Honestly, from a few feet away, you'd probably have a hard time telling these apart. They're both TVS, slim enough bezels, centralized pedestal stands. The TCL has a slightly chunkier border around the screen, metal, not plastic, which feels nice, but the Hisense is a little cleaner looking from the front. It's not a major deal unless you're all about the aesthetics, but the TCL stand has two height settings, one for adding a soundbar underneath and one for a lower profile look. In person, neither of these is what I'd call wall-hugging thin. That's just part of the deal with big mini LED arrays. You kind of have to let go of the dream of OLED thinness if you want mini LED brightness and backlight zones. But again, you're getting actual drivers, and sometimes even base transducers built into these TVs. Big things need space. Fair trade. Let's talk about the remote, because we all use it way more than we like to admit. TCL's remote is a little more compact, and I kind of dig it. Play, home, back, volume, everything's in the right spot. It's got backlighting too, and that's huge. Press a button in the middle of the night, and boom, no feeling around like your living room is an escape room. Hisense does one better in some ways. Remotes usually come preloaded with a bunch of app buttons, right? Netflix, YouTube, random streaming services you never use. But with Hisense, you can assign one of your own. That little heart and plus button actually lets you pick your go-to app. That's a cool little touch. Feels less like they're trying to sell you a service and more like they're giving you control. Slight edge to Hisense here. Ports, connectivity, inputs, boring? Yeah? Important? Absolutely. The TCL QM8K gives you 4 HDMI ports, standard, right? But only 2 of those are HDMI 2.1. That's the fast one with VRR and high refresh rate support. The other 2, old school HDMI 2.0. Now, if you're like most people and connect, say, a soundbar, a game console, and maybe an Apple TV or Roku, you're fine. But if you're that one person who has a PS5, an Xbox Series X, a gaming PC, and a 4K disc player, you're suddenly gonna run out of fast ports. Hisense steps up here. 3 of their ports are HDMI 2.1. Plus, wildcard here, they added a USB-C display port. Yes, you can plug your laptop straight into this thing like it's a monitor, and it works. Up to 144 Hz too. Now, it doesn't support variable refresh rate over USB-C though, which kinda limits its gaming usefulness a bit. But for anyone who wants to plug in their Steam Deck or MacBook real quick without fiddling with adapters, this is awesome. Weird flex, but it works. So yeah, TCL, more standard. Hisense, more techie flexy. Now let's shift to the stuff you actually see on screen, user interface. Both of these use Google TV, so they already share 90% of their brain. You've got your content suggestions, the little row of your apps, your continue watching queue, all that jazz. But TCL adds a layer of polish. It feels a little more responsive, a little more modern. Better animations, less stutters. That said, Hisense hides some actual useful stuff in its menus. You just have to know it's there. For example, the Hisense shows you, in plain text, what resolution and frame rate you're getting from your input. That's huge for gamers and tech nerds. It's like, hey, you're getting 4K, 60 Hz with HDR right now? No guessing. TCL doesn't really do that. Also, TCL is the only one currently offering Google's Gemini AI integration. You can literally ask it to recommend movies based on mood, genre, actor, whatever. It's like Siri, but, well, actually useful. The thing is, a lot of folks don't want AI in their TVs. So, while it's neat, I won't say it's a selling point for everyone. Now, for the thing that really grabbed me, sound. Here's where I'm going to surprise some people. I've heard all the hype about Hisense sounding better out of the box. But honestly, I don't fully agree, at least not with these two specific TV models. The QM8K sounds more full. It's less sharp in the treble, has cleaner voices, less of that boxy TV hum that happens when you crank the volume. Is it turning your living room into a theater? Number. But for a TV this size, it does way better than you'd expect. Hisense's audio is punchier, louder at default volumes, but it starts to distort a little faster. If you're sitting right in front of it, it's fine. Off to the side or in a bigger room, TCL just handles it better. Again, not a universal rule for TCL versus Hisense's brands, but in this showdown, I'm giving TCL the checkmark for sound. Now, let's look at gaming. Because let's be honest, every TV these days wants to call itself gamer ready. The U8QG can hit 165 Hz with a PC. That's kind of insane on TV, but big but, you don't get VRR on every input, and the USB-C doesn't support it. TCL tops out at 144 Hz, which is already more than enough for consoles and most systems. Both TVs have a game bar feature, which gives you quick access to stuff like FPS counters, latency, VRR toggles, etc. Just hold down the play button, and it's there. Honestly, more manufacturers need to copy this. It makes switching modes during gameplay way less annoying. Input lag? Practically identical. Almost no visible lag for either unless you're intentionally testing for it. But where TCL sneaks ahead is its HDR tone mapping, especially for Xbox Series X users. You can actually turn dynamic tone mapping off on the QM8K. That's a big win, because once you do that, it just hands off control to the Xbox, which lets you fine-tune your HDR setup. That looks better in a lot of games. Not washed out, not crushed blacks, just right. Hisense doesn't have an option for this. It tends to override the signal with its own static HDR curve. For most people, it's not a huge problem. But if you're sensitive to shadow detail and highlights looking oversaturated, you'll notice. Which brings us smoothly to the next part, actual picture quality. Picture is king, yeah? So how do these two beasts match up? Let's just say it's complicated. Like, if TCL is a blockbuster action movie, Hisense is an award-winning indie that's almost but not quite as epic. Okay, now let's get into the thing everyone comes here for, the picture quality. Because let's be honest, no one drops money on a new 4K TV and says, as long as it powers on. You want it to look wow, and both of these TVs do. But not in the same way. Let's start with Dolby Vision. First test, an Apple TV screensaver. You know, the drone shots that look like they were filmed by an angel who went to film school? Yeah, those. With both TVs in Dolby Vision Dark, that's the default mode, the TCL pops. Like, obviously brighter highlights, deeper blacks. More punch in the image. The buildings in the background have that kind of moody noir edge. Lots of contrast, not too flat. But here's the weird part. If you look deeper into the shadows, the Hisense actually holds on to more detail. That building top, the windows on the 7th floor, you can kind of see what's there in the Hisense. On TCL, it's just a shadow blob. It's one of those cases where you see the TCL and go, whoa, but then you squint and go, wait, where did that rooftop go? The colors? TCL wins there. Not by miles, but it's noticeable. Even when watching low saturation content, food shows, dramas, people's faces, the TCL adds just a bit more pop without looking fake. Think deeper reds, more vibrant blues. and skin tones that don't fall into that weird zombie pink you get on bad TVs. Flip over to Dolby Vision Go. Q? Different story. Now the Hisense almost matches the brightness. They're real close. That dynamic tone mapping on TCL gets toned down. It's trying to be more reference. She is so always less flashy. At this point, you've really just got different tuning philosophies. TCL says, make it punchy. Hisense says, make it detailed. Neither is wrong. It's like two photographers editing the same photo with different filters. Both are technically accurate, just a different vibe. Now, throw in some real torture test stuff. We use Jennifer Galla's mastering clips here, which were made for testing brightness range. These clips are nuts. They go from 1,000 nits all the way to 10,000 nits. If your TV can't handle it, you'll know immediately. In Dolby Vision Dark, the TCL lights up more aggressively. The desert sunlight, the glint on her jewelry, all of it looks brighter. Not like eye-searing bright, but bright enough to feel premium. But then we hit Dolby Vision IQ, and bam, the Hisense holds its own, almost suspiciously well. Somehow, it keeps darker areas cleaner too. Less crushed blacks. You start realizing the algorithm Hisense is using is maybe less dramatic, but a little smarter about balance. Real-world moment, watching planet Earth in Dolby Vision. Water scenes, slow ocean pans, giant shadows under sea creatures. The TCL turns the whole frame into a stunning, contrast-heavy punch bowl. It looks like art. But again, the Hisense lets you see more texture in the sand, more variation in the water's shadow. Neither one looks bad. I'd take either. But the choice becomes, do you want more raw pop, or do you want more subtle detail? Let's move to HDR10, because most content still isn't Dolby Vision. Same content, Filmmaker mode, aka the please stop ruining my movie setting. Watching The Most Quiet Place on Earth on YouTube, gorgeous nature footage. This is fun because the cameras that film this stuff aren't pulling tricks. It's all natural light. And here, honestly, they're neck to neck, not just close, identical to 99% of eyes. Greens, sunlight, shadow under plants, glimmer across rocks. It's just equal. I paused multiple times to double check. That's when I realized this is going to be a constant theme with these two TVs. Some tiny differences, like TCL having ever so slightly better saturation in yellows, or the Hisense showing a touch more fine texture in dark bark. But nothing you'd notice without two TVs side by side and time to kill. Let's do one more. Non-HDR, 4K standard Netflix stuff. Pulled up the Blacklist, Season 8. Dark hallways, dramatic lighting, lots of fun tests for black levels. First take, TCL has a cooler tone, slight bluish-white push in skin tones, almost trying to mimic OLED whites. You'd never notice if you weren't hyper-examining it, but if you do catch it, it's a quick fix in white balance settings. Hisense feels a little more neutral. Honestly, I prefer it for sitcoms or anything shot on a budget. It doesn't try to fake drama where there isn't any. Now, something subtle. The Hisense is just better with gradients and compressed content. Watching SDR YouTube videos, like vlogs or lower bitrate travel stuff, there's a noticeable improvement in how it handles areas of flat color. Blue skies? They don't turn into a blocky nightmare on the U8QG. TCL? It's not bad, but some softness in transitions shows up now and then. You especially see this when someone moves across a dim, blue-lit scene. TCL has a bit more macro blocking, even with gradation smoothing turned on. Which brings me to something most people skip over. Filmmaker mode versus standard picture modes. Here's the thing. If you leave either of these TVs in standard picture mode out of the box, they're both sharp and bright, but they also both look wrong. Colors are overdone, motion smoothing is on, and shadows are boosted. It's like watching a Christopher Nolan movie that's been color graded by Instagram. But go into Filmmaker mode, turn off motion, interpolation, and calibrate the brightness to your room, and suddenly both TVs feel like they're showing what the filmmaker actually shot. not what the algorithm wants to push. In this mode, they get real close. But here's where TCL pulls a small win: blooming control. When there's white text against a black background, say subtitles in a dark movie, the TCL keeps things tighter. Less blooming, fewer light halos. The Hisense does a good job, but you'll see just a little more light spill. The local dimming on the TCL just feels a touch more responsive per zone. Now, I have to say, this is the sort of difference that sounds big but isn't a deal breaker. You'd only notice it if you saw both side by side. But it's there. And for people who watch a lot of movies in the dark, it might matter more than it sounds. Action scene time. Pulled up Mad Max. Fury Road on disc. Big test for both brightness and detail under chaos. Opening scene just before the storm. The flames, neck and neck. The Hisense seemed to hold on to orange richness better, but again, we're talking 5% difference. The TCL had slightly better shadows behind those flames, and the sky gradients felt smoother. Both had moments where I paused and just said, wow. But then, we hit specular highlights, light glints in eyes, chrome flashes, window reflections, and the TCL really stood out. I'm talking about a real dazzle, like your eye is drawn to the light in a way that feels cinematic. That's a huge strength of TCL's backlight system on this model. Not to say the Hisense is dull, far from it, but the TCL can push the highlights harder without washing out details around them. Whether that matters depends on what you watch and how bright your room is. Lighting in the room actually becomes a surprisingly big conversation here. If you watch TV in a very bright space, like with giant windows or tons of natural light coming in during the day, both of these are great. But TCL hits slightly higher peak brightness, which helps combat that glare a bit better. Still, Hisense holds up crazy well, considering how much cheaper it usually is. One last trick before we wrap this section. I paused a still frame from a black and white film, then flipped through picture modes manually on both TVs. The TCL is contrast heavy. Every shift between modes is trying to deepen black, boost white, and pop the mids. Hisense gives more balance. Sometimes, that makes it feel less dramatic. But other times, especially with faces or low contrast scenes, it's more natural. So what do we take from this picture quality battle? They're both awesome, truly. They're also clearly tuned to appeal to different kinds of eyes. If you like high drama, saturated images, and brighter peak elements, you'll likely lean TCL. If you prefer control, detail retention, and less aggressive processing, Hisense will feel more refined. Of course, everything changes if you use pro calibration or even just a good YouTube guide to tweak it. But we're judging these as real buyers would, out of box or lightly adjusted. So far, edge to TCL for brightness and pop, edge to Hisense for realism and detail. You came here for answers, maybe hoping we'd tell you there's a clear winner. But the truth is, both the TCL QM8K and the Hisense U8QG are way better than they have any right to be at this level. This isn't about picking the best. It's about finding the one that fits you better. TCL brings the eye-popping brightness, cleaner highlight detail, stronger gaming features like HDR pass-through, and a bit more polish and software speed. Hisense quietly wins in processing, off-angle viewing at certain sizes, smoother gradients, more precise upscaling, and smarter input flexibility. They each have quirks. They each shine in their own way. So the real question is, are you the kind of person who wants maximum punch, or are you chasing subtlety and control? Think about your room, your habits, your eyes. That's what matters. People don't want a TV just for specs. They want one that's smart enough to work. Before you go, hit that subscribe button. We don't just review, we expose. From the hype, to the hidden failures, to the tricks brands hope you'll never question. So hit like, tap subscribe, and join thousands of smart shoppers who already know smart spending starts with asking smarter questions. We'll see you in the next one.